everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this special edition of the Ona Report. Today you'll be hearing a brief update from each of the center's faculty, minus Dr. Maria Silveira, who couldn't join us today. My name's John Arthington. I'm a professor and center director of the IFAS Range Cattle Research and Education Center, specializing in beef cattle management. At the conclusion of today's presentation, there will be a time for questions. At that time, you'll be able to type your question into the GoToWebinar's question panel. This will be approximately 30-minute presentation time, and you'll be hearing from 5 different faculty members. To get started, I'm going to cover a portion of our program related to the selenium fertilization of forage. All of the work that you're seeing here is part of Juliana Hanchez's master's thesis program here at the Range Cattle Research and Education Center. Briefly, selenium fertilization of forage is an important consideration when we think about delivering selenium nutrition to grazing cattle. Throughout the Southeast, selenium is known to be the most limiting trace mineral for the productivity of cows and calves. So several different management structures exist for us to deliver selenium to our cattle. The biofortification of forage is an example of one of those systems where selenium can be applied either through fertilizer or other means onto a grazing landscape or onto hay fields, and then that forage either harvested or grazed to deliver selenium to our cattle. So in this particular study, we delivered selenium to Gibbs Bermuda grass hay fields to increase the selenium content of that forage as it was harvested as a hay crop. And then that selenium was fed in 2 studies, in one study to growing calves, and then in a second study to prepartum pregnant cows. The treatments that we examined were high selenium forage, sodium selenite, which is an inorganic source of selenium and probably the most common form of supplemental selenium provided to cattle, or control treatment that provided no supplemental selenium. And then in both studies, we looked at selenium status, primarily measured by whole blood and plasma selenium concentrations, as well as the collection of liver biopsy samples. We also looked at the selenium transfer to the developing calf, both in blood and liver concentrations found in that calf, as well as cotyledon selenium concentrations that were collected from the placenta in those calves. And then just briefly, the next 2 slides is a result, overview of our results. The growing calves that consumed selenium from the high selenium hay had greater concentrations incorporated in their tissues in calves consuming the same amount of selenium from the inorganic sodium selenite source. And this is shown here over 40 days of feeding. Now, when we look at those results, in this particular study, we utilize what's called a pair feeding approach. And that means that the amount of selenium that was consumed by forage from each pen, that was paired to a pen of calves provided the sodium selenite. And so the closed squares and the open circles represent those 2 paired pens. If you look at the bottom line, that's the amount of selenium that was consumed for each of those paired pen groups. Now, if we look at the groups that consumed less than 3 milligrams of selenium a day, you can see that the incorporation of selenium into the tissues of those calves is much greater when they consume the high selenium forage compared to the sodium selenite. Contrast that, however, to the pens that consume greater than 3 milligrams of selenium a day, and there's very little difference seen between the high selenium hay and the sodium selenite treatment. Currently, the recommendation for the amount of selenium that cattle should consume, beef cattle, is set right around 3 milligrams a day. So from these data, we can at least imply that when cattle consume a marginal amount or a low amount of selenium, less than 3 milligrams a day, the source of selenium is very important. When they consume greater than 3 milligrams a day, the source becomes of lesser importance. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Brent Sellers.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here again for the Ona Report webinar. I'm going to cover some of the research that we've been doing over the past few years that was funded through the beef enhancement funds by the Florida Cattleman. And we've been working on Broomsedge. We started the projects back in 2012 and 2013. But just briefly, if you're not familiar with Broomsedge, I think everybody is, but it's a clump-forming perennial grass that lives about 3 to 5 years, so a pretty short lifespan overall. Thought this was going to be pretty easy when we started this project. There's only a couple of Broomsedge species. Well, I found out quickly there's about 18. So it's a little more difficult than I thought it was going to be. But the big question is, how do we manage Broomsedge in Bahia grass pastures, because we have no selective herbicides to control it. So a lot of the folklore, as I call it, is, if we lime our pastures, the Broomsedge populations will decrease over time. If you look at the table on the right-hand part of the slide, went out to several different locations in several counties, and the pH is all over the board from 4.3 all the way up to 7.8. Okay, so a vast difference in the soil pH, but also a vast difference in the species of Broomsedge in those locations. So liming alone may or may not decrease the Broomsedge populations in pastures. I think it's going to be species dependent. Another question we had is phosphorus applications, do they impact Broomsedge populations over time, as well as micronutrients? And what really got us interested in that, if you look at the table, the second Polk County location we looked at that has the 2 stars, it was the only location where the Broomsedge population was declining over time, but it received an application of biosolids, and it was the only location that has measurable P, copper, and zinc. So we think it's either a combination of lime or a full fertilizer or the addition of micronutrients as well. So we started the study, again, like I said, back in 2012 in Ona and Arcadia. The Ona location, the pH started out with was at 4.3, and the Broomsedge species was purple bluestem. So obviously this species likes low soil pH. The Arcadia location, the pH averaged about 7.8, and it was high because they put a lot of lime-stabilized biosolids there. And the Broomsedge population at that location was bushy bluestem. St. Cloud location was started in 2013, and this has the most normal Broomsedge bluestem. pH of that location was around 5.5. So we set up the study as a 3x3 factorial. I'm sorry, a 2x3 factorial. The Ona location had an application of lime back in 2012, and we didn't really raise the soil pH with one application, so we came back in 2013 with the second application. We finally got the soil pH up around 5.1. So we're still not where we need to be as far as the lime goes, as far as the soil pH goes at the Ona location. At Arcadia, since the soil pH was so high, we did not apply lime at all. Instead, we've been applying sulfur annually at 100 pounds to the acre. And then each year we're applying 500 pounds of 10-5-10 of NPK fertilizer, and then 25 pounds of the FRIT 503G, which is just a micronutrient mix. And the fertilizers are being applied annually. Back in 2012, when we started the studies, we georeferenced 4 spots within each plot and counted the smutgrass, Broomsedge, in each of those locations. So we've tracked that over time. And just briefly, I'm just going to show you the Ona and Arcadia results. At this point in time, we haven't seen any differences occur yet at the St. Cloud location, because I found at Ona and Arcadia it took 3 years to see any differences or any decline in the Broomsedge population. Remember, these are 3 to 5 year living plants. So we look at the Ona graph, which is the one on the left, in the blue bar, that is without lime, and the orange bar is with lime. This is actually significant at the 0.05 level, and we've got about a 40% reduction in Broomsedge density, purple bluestem density, over a 3-year period. NPK is not quite significant at the 0.05 level, but it would be at the 0.1% level. And we're seeing, again, about a 40% reduction just on those main factors. Looking at Arcadia, this is kind of an interesting situation because we're seeing a decline in broomsedge at that location just over time without doing anything, which is kind of unique. I'm not sure really what's going on there, but we do know it's being mowed at least twice a year. So that could have some effect on the results as well. But overall, we're seeing about a 40 to 50% reduction in the broomsedge density there. But really what's affecting it at the Arcadia location is the application of NP and K. So not sure what's going on there, whether it's the nitrogen, the phosphorus, or the potassium. Micronutrients so far are not showing any results on the broomsedge population. So I will stop there and turn it over to Dr. Vendramini, and he's actually going to cover Dr. Sellers too. For those of you that have the printout presentation, Dr. Sellers' slides are at the very end.
Thank you, Brent. I will cover my program in a slightly different way, so I will show some of the projects. I'll show more projects, but with less detail. So I'll not show you a lot of results and design and treatments, but you please feel free to ask if you have any interest at the end of the presentation. So we have been doing work with the rhizoma peanut, or the perennial peanut that propagated by seed. This is the PhD project of Joao Sanchez, and we have been working with this peanut since 2013. And we have pretty much two main projects. There was establishment and grazing of the perennial peanut. And just a little more detail. So this is not the typical rhizoma peanut or perennial peanut that propagate by stems, like we have here, the Arachis glabrata. This is the Arachis pintoi. So it actually can be planted by seed. So that was our interest, the establishment. So in this first slide here, we see the difference on the establishment work that we did. On your left-hand side, you can see when the peanut was established with barrier grass, and on the right-hand side is a peanut that was planted by itself. So they all received the same treatments. As you can see here, we have a nice barrier grass established pasture with peanut, and the density of the peanut tends to increase over time. When on the side, we can see that we have a great invasion of weeds. And weed control in this scenario is very difficult because we don't have selective herbicides or efficient selective herbicides. So we have seen that on the peanut standpoint, the establishment with barrier grass or with a warm season grass is a good thing because it covers the area faster and you have less problems with weeds. We also did a grazing work where we oversee the peanut into a jigs pasture that was established. We did in 2013. And we grazed those pastures for 2 years with 2 intensities. And our main concern was persistence. The problem that we have with warm season legumes here in Florida is after you graze for a while, they disappear. The grass is much more aggressive, it will take over, and the legume will disappear. So we saw after 2 years of grazing that didn't happen with this peanut. In fact, over time, the density and cover of the peanut increased over time when established on a jigs pasture. The production is still not the one that we were expecting, so the production of the peanut was not as significant as we thought, but now we are working with some fertility treatments to see if we can bump up the production of the peanut and still have a good interaction of the peanut and the grass. Again, as we think that that's a good combination to have peanut and grass together and graze it together. So a second work that I'm going to mention today, it's with a plant that has been around for a while. It's called sunham. We have started this work this year. So this is a crop that we just harvested in April. We have a lot of problems with deer and hogs because it seems that it's very digestible, and that's why it attracts a lot of wildlife. So we have in the literature a lot of work with sunham raised or fed to beef cattle. So we just have reports, but not much in the peer-reviewed literature. So we have 2 distinct projects. One is testing different cultivars at different harvest management, and that is in a small plot. And also we have this large experiment here that we're going to feed those sun hemp hay to beef heifers. So we want to see, and we're going to have levels of substitution on a Bermuda grass field, hay. So we're going to have 100% Bermuda, half and half Bermuda sun hemp, or 100% sun hemp. And we're going to see what is the effect that they have on the cattle. And the last one that I would like to cover today, it's the project funded by the Florida Cattleman Association. In 2014, we released 2 new cultivars of limpo grass called Giptuck and Kenhai. And those cultivars have been planted around and spread around producers, and is doing very well on the production and nutritive value standpoint. However, fertilization is a main concern on beef cattle production because it's a high cost input. So people wanted to decrease fertilization. So now we are doing this work to try to identify which of these cultivars will have a better fertilizer use efficiency. That means something that you can fertilize less and still get more production. And on the side of this project, we have a new cultivar, one of the old hybrids that we have in the initial collection, that's called number 1. That one was not released. It has a different growth habit than the other 2, although they are also a cross between Big Alta and Flor Alta. So it grows closer to the ground. So we are interested in this cultivar and also to see what is the fertilizer use efficiency. So the outcome of this project may also be a 3rd release of this hybrid limpo grasses, that is this number 1 that has, I think it has a good potential for grazing, primarily because it grows close to the ground, it protects itself, it may have a good impact on persistence. I thought that was my last one, but this is actually my last one. So I am also testing some new Brachiaria cultivars. So Brachiaria is the most planted warm season species in the world. So we have few here in Florida, but many times they are not adapted to our poorly drained soils. Those Brachiarias have very good nutritive value, but they are not very persistent here. So we brought a new one from Colombia. It's called Mavuno. And now we are testing that compared to Jigs and Tifta 85 and to see what is the production compared to the grasses that we have established here in South Florida right now. So I will switch now to cover Dr. Silveira's program. I'm presenting on behalf of her because I am a co-author in this work. This work was also funded by the Florida Cattleman Association funds and will be specific on biosolids. We have seen some research done in the past with biosolids, but it's very difficult to find something that will be long-term, that will show the long-term effects of these biosolids. And that's of great interest because biosolids is a great source of fertilizer for pastures because it has decreased cost. But biosolids has some problems. The main one is the nutrients are not balanced. They have N, P, and K in a way that the uptake by the grass is not appropriate for that ratio that it has. It has much more phosphorus than the grass can uptake, and however, it's adequate on nitrogen. So in general, people have this accumulation of phosphorus over time if they keep applying multiple times. So what this project will cover, so we will have an instrumentation that will be installed on the field for water quality and gas production that will over time monitor. Primarily, we will see all the parameters on forage production, and we also will see the impact on water quality. So these are some pictures of the instrumentation that was established here. We plan to conduct this study, as I said, for a longer time. There will be 3-4 years, and to evaluate what is the impact of these biosolids on those materials. Additionally, we're going to include some treatments that is called a product called biochar. Biochar has been something very popular in the Midwest. It's a product that is high in carbon and has greater efficiency to, it works like a sponge to uptake nutrients and hold nutrients. So Maria is interested to see if the biochar may be a good combination with biosolids to try to hold those excessive phosphorus concentration. or excessive phosphorus amounts that will be delivered when you deliver the biosolids. So biochar has low cost and is a byproduct, so it's easier to get in. So the combination of those products is of interest for this project. So now I will switch to Dr. Raoul Boughton.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a talk on the working ranch and wildlife. I have a large interest in this area, but we have not a lot of data to go on in this area at all. So what we've done as producers, we've modified and manipulated natural landscapes to support the production. And this is detrimental for some wildlife species, but it's not for others. This is actually especially important for several threatened and endangered species in Florida. The really amazing thing is Florida ranches provide a grassland habitat that is disappearing worldwide. And if managed really well, we can actually provide excellent habitat for many species. Some of those in Florida include crested caracara, wood-storks, sandhill cranes, American kestrels, shrikes, burrowing owls, to name a few. So I want to work with ranchers to identify how important ranch habitats are to certain species. And so we ask, why is this important to know? It's because ranch environments in Florida are really connected. They're core habitats for many species, which means that they're supporting large populations of some of these species. And in some cases, the word here I use is the last bastion. So if these ranches go, these species go too, and they'll become extinct. But what we need to do is have a thorough understanding so that we can actually provide information to both the populace and agencies so that we can argue for monetary support to ranchers to support wildlife. And from a ranching perspective, you can think of this as diversifying your business. So instead of just ranching cattle, you're ranching wildlife as well. So this is really important in Florida. I want to show this graph. We forget about this. There's 100,000 people coming into Florida on average to live here permanently. Excuse me, and that's increasing 2013, 2014, 2015. So that means there's a lot of impact on our landscapes and increases in urban expansion. I'm going to show this a slightly different way. In this map, this is the Northern Everglades catchment. I can't do the whole of Florida because it'll ruin my computer trying to actually process this. But for the Northern Everglades catchment, you can see that pie chart showing that improved pasture ranch lands, that big green wedge there, is a dominant part of this system. And that means as people are moving in here, we're losing that big core area. The other thing on the right-hand side of this is our water area. We have 24% of our landscape is covered with water, either rivers or wetlands. That means we have a really diverse wildlife habitat. So those two things combined together, ranches and water probably cover 50% of our landscape here. And that means that there's a lot of wildlife in those areas. So I'm just going to have one highlight. We need to collect data on the species that are living on ranches so we can make these arguments. And one of the ones we've put forward now that's being funded by the Florida Wildlife Commission, my program, and I have a student, Elizabeth White, whose hands you can see here, is to actually collect data on species of special concern here in Florida, Florida burrowing owl. It's becoming extinct in urban areas, but it's actually quite common in ranching areas in certain locations. We don't know enough about it to actually make the argument how common and how we can actually improve the ability of ranchers to say that they're supporting this species. So hopefully in the next year or two, we're going to give you a lot of information about burrowing owls.
So thank you, Dr. Boughton. My name is Philipe Moriel. I'm the new assistant professor and then a beef cattle nutritionist at Florida at Ona. My official start date was yesterday, so I don't even have an email account yet, but I will. But I included my personal email account, so anybody that want to contact me after the webinar can do it. Also, if you go to the Ona webpage, there's more information about the specific research and extension programs that I have been doing lately. So today I'm just going to focus on a little bit of my background and also where I've been working for the last 2.5 years and some of the plans that I have for research and extension. So briefly, I got my bachelor degree in animal science from São Paulo State University in Brazil in 2008. Moved to the United States and got my master's at Wyoming, working primarily with beef cattle nutrition, byproduct supplementation for beef heifers and cows. And then in 2010, I came to Ona and started working on my PhD here with Dr. Arthington and Dr. Vendramini, working on calf management systems and how that affects long-term performance of calves. So before I was graduated, I was hired by North Carolina State University, where I've been working for the past 2.5 years. I was an assistant professor there too, a livestock specialist at the Mountain Research Station in Waynesville. My appointment was 75% extension and 25% research, working primarily with nutrition and the effects of that on reproduction and immunity. Something that I've done there with the help of a lot of people and that I want to do it here is to implement this producer and livestock agent-driven research and extension programs. And then I'm going to mention more about that. But I want to take the chance and to thank North Carolina for all the support that they gave to me. If we were successful, it was because of their support. And then also that support also gave me enough experience to be ready and be also successful here. So I want to thank everybody there, and especially the cattleman producers in North Carolina. So what am I planning to do in terms of research? Obviously, it's to use nutrition to improve growth, immunity, and reproductive performance of beef cattle. I'll focus on 3 main areas because Florida is a cow-calf state. Pre- and post-wean calf nutrition will always be one of the priorities of the research program. There's a lot of things that we can still do. The other 2 areas that I really like is fetal programming and metabolic imprinting. Fetal programming is this concept that the nutrition of the gestating cow will affect how the calf develops and then how he's going to perform after birth. Whereas metabolic imprinting is the nutrition of the calf in the first few months of his life, changing how they're going to perform later in the future. Okay? Why do I like those 2 areas? Because it explores this concept of strategic supplementation. So it's short periods of time of supplementation, short amounts of supplement, but it is applying a highly critical time for the calf development. And that happens because during gestation, also during the first few months of the calf's life, they're very flexible. Their metabolism is still adapting to the environment. So they show some kind of plasticity that we can modulate and maybe take advantage of that. So depending on how we treat those calves now, we can change the outcome in the future. So those are the 2 areas that I'm going to work on, obviously with adaptations to Florida. One example of this area, we just published a study last year where we saw that a short-term energy restriction, 40 days during the late gestation, decreased the amount of calves responding to the vaccination and the amount of antibody produced. Okay, so there's a lot of things that still need to be explored in this area. Now, in terms of extension, obviously we reflect my research program, but something that I want to do that we've done in North Carolina is we created this group of producers, faculty, and agents, and then we would discuss all the research and extension programs that we had planned for the year. That's something that I want to do. I would like for you tell me what you want and how you want the programs to be delivered. 10 days from now, we have a Cattleman's Conference. I would like to meet as many of you as I can. And then after that, I'll start doing visits to each county and visit some producers and collect the information. So my priority for the first 2 months is to gather information from you. And so you tell me what you need and how you want those programs to be delivered. Just an example, in North Carolina, we had that team that I just mentioned to you. We focused a lot on the educational programs with hands-on activities. We try to do on-farm educational programs at the livestock centers and auction markets, and also multi-county trainings, and increase the amount of in-service training to increase the quality of service to producers. Okay, so, and again, I'm sorry I had to be quick, but you guys are going to hear more about the details of what I've been doing and what I'm planning to do in the next few months, and then I'm looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Prevatt, livestock and forage economist here at the Range Cattle Center, and I'm just going to cover the Livestock and Forage Economics Extension Program. So 3 of our main extension priorities that we're focusing on is continuing to look at the expansion of this beef cattle herd, continuing to produce and update some of our enterprise budgets, our cow-calf budgets, some stocker budgets for the Deep South Stocker Conference this year, as well as our replacement heifer budgets. And then hitting on some of those forage budgets as well. And then the last thing is our cost of production of beef cattle herds in the state of Florida. So looking at that first main topic there, the U.S. cattle inventory, over the past 2 years, cattle inventories increased by 3.9%. From that 2014 low to increasing by 0.7% in 2015, and then again in 2016 increasing by 3.2%. Now what we've seen thus far in 2016 is we're continuing to see the herd expand at a pretty rapid rate in 2016. So while these cattle market prices, they have declined 40% since that fall 2014 high, we're still seeing a continuing herd expansion here in the beef cattle sector. So what this beef cattle herd expansion is going to mean for us is as this herd continues to grow, there's going to be more beef in the pipeline, and we're going to see some lower revenues, some of these lower feeder calf prices here. So we've got to continue to monitor this herd expansion that's taking place. And then on the enterprise budget side, last summer we released our 2015 UF cow-calf budget, and this summer we'll release an update to it. Last year we looked at basically producers that are raising their own replacement heifers, and this next update allows us to look at purchasing replacement heifers while also raising them at the same time. So it's just an update on our last beef cow-calf budget, and also our initiative is to include more forage budgets in our enterprise budget selection there on our Range Cattle REC website. So basically just producing and updating a lot of forage budgets for our producers to utilize as we move through this cattle cycle and start to experience some lower prices. And then that last objective is mainly focusing on cost of production. As we mentioned with this herd expansion, lower revenues, these lower cattle prices, we've really got to get focused on how to maintain or lower some of our cost of production. And as you can see over that last 30 years, that's about $600 a head increase in terms of these taking care of these brood cows on a yearly basis. About $19 a year is what it typically costs us, a typical increase that it would cost us to maintain that brood cow. So looking at some ways that we can reduce our cost of production, improving our grazing, some of our efficiency there. So looking at the specific areas where we could reduce costs of production. So those are our 3 main objectives here for this livestock and forage economics program. So we'd like to thank you for attending today's webinar. If you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer them now, or you can use the contact information that's displayed here. And then be sure to watch for our upcoming webinar that's going to be for our July Ona webinar that's going to be with Dr. Arthington. It's going to be on factors impacting shrink in beef calves, and it's going to be held on July 12th at noon. So if you have any questions, we'd be glad to help answer them now.
Any questions from the room? No? Any questions on the webinar?
Hey, I got one. What biochar is a byproduct of what?
We had a question from the room that's asking about the biochar. Is a byproduct of what industry, and I'm not really sure, but I think it's from the coal industry, and that's what they produce when they generate energy and those things. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate your time today, and we look forward for you attending future webinars. Thank you.